XR. What are some of the things you got to think about? What are some of the considerations? And I want to revisit that really briefly because most of our time is going to be spent at the end of that process this afternoon. So is AR and VR the right answer? I promise I'm not going to say anything about AI, and I'm not going to talk about HoloLens at all. So don't worry about it. But is AR and VR the right answer, right? What are we thinking about? What are we trying to answer to? What is the question? And is this the answer for it? Some of the things that we're going to think about. Is the audience ready? Can you scale your offering? Several presentations today about scaling in lots of different ways. Do you have a cost in mind? Do you want to control cost? Is that a factor? Is time an issue? Do you want it really fast or do you want it good, right? What hardware do you want to use? Do you have any hardware? Are you going to have to buy hardware for this project? Will you continue to use this? Is this a solution that's going to carry over time? What tools do you have now, right? Do you have anything? Do you even have a plan? Is there another way to teach this? This is always my first question, because a lot of times we defer to, the coolest answer, right? Which is, let's use all this awesome technology that's available to us today because it's cool, it's engaging, it costs a lot of money. It must be good, right? But is there any other way to do this? Is this the only way? Is this the best way? Is this the most expeditious way? So that's always my first question, because my grounding, my base is training and development. It's not XR, right? So I'm not always looking for the next new thing, the next new technology. I'm trying to make sure that our educational solutions are hitting the mark and that we are changing behavior of the people that we're training. Okay. So we've seen this before. This is just, an explanation of XR and what it means. Is it augmented reality, virtual reality? You guys know all this stuff. All right, so this was the question, right? Before we play this really quick video clip. There's no audio, so don't worry about it. You're not going to miss anything. The question was, we have a truck launch to support, and we want to be able to engage a large audience of salespeople, and we want them to be able to talk about the safety features that we have updated and some of the newest features that have been applied to our product, to these Volvo trucks, right? But we only have a few trucks to use for this particular event. We've got hundreds of people that are going to come through 6 or 7 waves of this event. And we want to keep our trucks in good working condition. We don't want to crash our trucks to show them how the safety features that we've built into these trucks work, right? Some of them are emergency procedure following safety features, e-calling 911 and things like that. So we want to keep our trucks intact. We don't want to start destroying them, before they even get out in the market. So this is what we envisioned to answer this question. How do we show these features? How do we train these features so that our salespeople can talk to their customers about what these features are going to do for them, help them with what they're going to experience? So go. Okay. These are all the people that are just coming to the event, wave after wave after wave. And this is the experience that we wanted them to have. See, that's really quick, right? This is what we envisioned before we actually had a plan, right? Oh, we can use VR. We can also use AR. We did use both. The VR is what helped us to create the simulations of all those safety features, right? And we wanted to have the steering wheel, so we got a PlayStation set up. We had the foot pedals and everything, because inside of the trucks, there are some things that they're going to feel in the steering wheel. So we wanted haptics so that we could recreate that, right? Because that's really cool. We want you to feel what you're going to feel. We want you to see the messages that come up in the dash, right? So we want to put you inside of a truck in that experience. We want you to hear all of the things you're going to hear when, stuff is beeping to tell you that you're too close to the vehicle in front of you and your truck is going to stop on its own. We want you to feel when that truck stops abruptly because there is some sort of emergency situation. So all of those things we were thinking about that we wanted to recreate in this simulated environment for our salespeople. And we made all those decisions before we ever knew what this was going to look like or how it was going to work. We knew what we wanted, right? Okay, so that story's over. We did it. We're good. We delivered. What we never talked about was, what do we expect on the back end of this? Do we have any expectations at all? Sometimes you don't, right? Sometimes you just want to get it done, and if it's good, it's great, you've hit the mark, we don't care what happens after that. But sometimes you do care, and we ask the questions too late. So that's the first thing that I want us to remember, is to ask the questions and have the conversations at the beginning when we're making plans of how cool it's going to be and, what a great success it's going to be for us. All right. So measuring success in ROI, like I said, it needs to come at the beginning. Every time we talk about ROI, every time I talk about ROI anyway, the assumption is that we're talking about money, right? Because investment usually equals dollars. You're going to pay money, a whole lot, to get something that looks like a solution. This is a really simple formula for ROI, right? But it's all about cost and what you're reselling for, some kind of return on that investment. And usually if it's some sort of percentage that's in the positive, you're doing good, right? This is just a quick example from my son, right? He doesn't say the words, return on investment or ROI. He doesn't care about that. He says, Mom, if I buy this pair of shoes that are dropping tomorrow at 10 p.m., then I'm going to be able to get this size, which is the most popular size, so I'll definitely be able to resell it very quickly, and I should be able to get X amount of dollars for the sale, that resale, right? So he's thinking, he's trying to accomplish something. Now, his return that he expected, he's going to, what did I say, spends $150, he's going to sell it for $750. His expectation is that the return on his investment is 400%, which is awesome, right? We're not going to have that. But that's really cool for him. Very simple calculation, very simple formula, right? But ROI is never this simple, because we're never talking about just straight dollars, right? And we need to think beyond what is the tangible, right? It's not always quantitative. It's not always in numbers. Sometimes those qualitative factors are things that we never think about because we don't see it, because it doesn't show up on a spreadsheet or a balance sheet. But those are impactful as well. And just because we don't resell something for X amount more than we paid for it doesn't mean that it doesn't have value, because value is relative, right? Okay, moving on. So, what should we measure when we talk about ROI? Definitely the cost is up there. That's always the thing that we think about first, is money. For us, my colleague is sitting right there in the middle of the room. Say hi, Scott. That's Scott Behe. So when I want to spend money, I talk to Scott, right? He's my money guy, okay? And I love him. I want him to keep giving me money, right? But Scott and I had a conversation earlier this year about money that we spent a year ago to complete this project and deliver at the event. We never talked about what our expectations were after the fact until months later. And then we started to look back. How much did we spend? What? 30% of our budget went to the AR and VR solutions together, right? We didn't think about that before, right? We also started to think about how much time we spent on this project. Now, when we started, we thought, oh, a few months, 6 months. About 12, 13 months later, we're like, are we not done yet? This is not done yet. Why? Because our expectations change, the scope of your project changes, the abilities of your developers change, right? There's a lot of dynamics that we don't think about. Measure in time. Proficiency. This is something we don't think about anywhere near as much as we should. Time to proficiency. When you train someone to do something in person and you take someone off the job because they have to do like a side-by-side with them and it takes them about a week to learn X procedure, okay, great. Then you compare that to, well, maybe I create this immersive experience for you and you can learn exactly that thing without taking that other person off the job, right? And now I get you to the same level of proficiency in a couple of days. That's good, right? It's all good, but you have to be able to measure it up front to compare it later. If you didn't have the measurement from when you took the guy off the job and you put them together for X amount of hours and it took X amount of time, then you can't say that this experience is better. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you. Thank you to the nodders. I appreciate you guys. Productivity. If there's something that we have to be doing faster or better, okay, are we doing it faster or better after we trained this way than when we trained that way? What do we measure today? So again, going back to the initial conversation about ROI, if you want to be able to have the conversation about ROI and present some kind of gain for the experience that you created, right? You have to think about what you measure today in order to do the comparisons to what you delivered tomorrow, right? If you're not measuring anything today, you can't start measuring after you've delivered something dynamic and new and wonderful and then say, well, we've got to figure out our return on this investment. It's kind of late, right? Okay, so we talked about all this stuff, measuring cost. For us, like I said, we invested $300,000 to $320,000. And this was for both, for AR and VR, but it wasn't what we went in thinking that we would spend. Again, things change, we work with it. All right, approximately 30%. What's the value of it? We don't know, right? What are we measuring the value of? We don't know, because we didn't think about any of that. How do we show our return? We don't know. And then we had no current AR or VR offering that we offered over time long enough to actually measure against, right? This is, what we did last year was my third experience delivering this type of solution. And it's always for a nice big launch, new product, it's cool, you get that cool factor in and you're like, yeah, we did it, we won, But in 2007, we had a very similar experience. We created a very similar experience. We used it at a similar event for a similar purpose, but we have no data from 2017, 2017. We have no data from back then that helps us understand or helps us to even calculate the ROI that we have from what we did last year. It would have been really helpful, But we just we go more for, this is a good solution, this is the right solution. We met the mark, right? Our salespeople had a cool experience. Our stuff worked. They are familiar with our safety features. They understand how things are going to work, ideally, when something happens in the truck. So we've accomplished our goal, but we don't know what our return is, okay? All right, measuring time, we talked about this. Measuring more, proficiency, productivity, and savings, okay? Savings is something that we don't talk about enough because we're always thinking about how much did we spend, right? But sometimes we've had to offer courses, We'll pull content out of an instructor-led experience. If it's pretty standard content and it's not dynamic, it doesn't change a whole lot, you can put that into a pretty solid e-learning, right? How much time do we save moving that content, making it available to a much larger audience, and not having people to travel for that experience, to spend money on hotels, food and entertainment and that kind of thing, right? So think about the savings also when we have new solutions in place. We don't think about that enough at all. All right. Unexpected ROI. So this is something that was really interesting to me because, we didn't even have the initial ROI conversation, like I said. But we did start talking about it afterwards, like I said, 30%, right? It was a big amount of money. But then we started to realize, hey, some of our dealers are reaching out to us, hey, that was really cool. We'd like to have this set up at our dealership because they have the same, I guess, situation is the word, right? They don't always have trucks that are just available for people to, go jump in and ride around. Sometimes the trucks haven't been delivered to them yet, but they want to talk to their customers about it, right? They want to start preempting those sales to say, let's create that engagement, that interest. So they're like, why don't we put our customers into that situation? Let them feel what it's gonna be like. Let them hear the audibles, let them feel the haptics. This is what's gonna happen in your steering wheel. The truck's gonna stop for you, right? Let them experience this also so that they can feel the same thing that we felt, so that they can have the same interest that they had, right? Now this is really new. This was not expected because we don't have just equipment set aside like, okay, we'll package this up and sell it to the dealer and that's easy. We don't have instructions for them to say this is how you put this stuff together. We didn't have the packaging of the solution that says we can take this and put it in another headset that you have at your facility and it'll run like this. We're not ready. But this is a good unexpected return on our investment, right? If we can now figure out how to package this experience and resell it to our dealers so that they can use it in their dealerships for their customers, we'd be doing pretty good. We're not there yet. We haven't done it, right? But it's an opportunity. It's an unexpected opportunity, but it's a really cool one. Okay, so that being said, the big thing is what? Have the conversations early and think about what you measure today to decide what you're going to measure tomorrow and figure out your ROI based on that, right? Okay, have I said anything that you guys didn't know already? Yeah, did I? What didn't you know?
Proficiency aspect different from productivity.
Oh, cool. Yeah. She said the proficiency being different from productivity and being able to split that out. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Oh, unexpected ROI. Yeah. Yeah. She said, yeah, the unexpected ROI. Okay. Sorry, I almost tripped on the water. I'm going to take that on the way out. Anything else that was new? Something that kind of sparks a thought? Or a, that's interesting. Yeah. Oh, hang on. We'll make Alex work a little bit. Right there. White shirt.
Yeah, Amir Frieldi from Michelin. This is just kind of something that I thought was really interesting was how you brought up just how dynamic return on investment can be. It's not necessarily this hard-coded thing where, there's a very clear cost, there's a very clear time invested, there's a very clear, level of proficiency that's needed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's a very dynamic process. I mean, as you're working along, implementing things like this, of course, things are going to change, right? Market factors might dictate that costs for the technology itself go up, right? Time might go up for one reason or another, some unexpected hurdle. And I just wanted to kind of highlight that. I think it's a really, really interesting thing that I've never really personally considered before. So thanks.
Good, yeah, thank you. All right. Any other ahas, or should we go on to any quick questions anybody's got? Or discussion, we can discuss also. Anybody have any experiences with ROI that you want to tell us all about? All right, oh, over there.
Yeah, my name's Angus Stevens from Start Beyond. My question around ROI is, do you find that some folks are not wanting to say what the current measurements are because they're then going to be held vulnerable or judged by what that version of success is in the future or the state of play currently?
That's interesting. Yeah, maybe, but we're kind of assuming that everything is going to be successful and you're always going to try and outdo yourself. So that's one thing. But, technology is there to support you in that it outdoes itself. So sometimes, you just, by continuing to use those things, you're going to be able to do, bigger and better as you go. As far as the other way, when you're not as successful, I think in those instances, it's even more important to unpack that experience and figure out why. Where did we not necessarily fail, but what are the areas that we could do more in to be more successful next time, to do better next time? And I think, some of us, when we take a very personal, role in, this wasn't the right thing, it wasn't the right solution, this is my fault, this is my thing, I'm the one responsible for training and development. But, that's where the rest of your team kind of comes in also, because you're going to incorporate the rest of those folks. You're going to incorporate your IT, you're going to incorporate purchasing people, you're going to incorporate, the Scots for operations, right? So it is a team effort, and I think, we have to sort of lead the charge of unpacking those experiences even when they're not as successful as we want them to be. Next time, it'll be better because you're all sort of more knowledgeable than you were before. If you just keep it to yourself, you're not helping the rest of your team either. Okay. Does that help? Anybody else? Way over there, Alex.
So we have time for one quick more.
One
more quick. I don't know what to say. Say your name and your organization.
Hello, my name is Cindy Yao, Takeda Pharmaceuticals, and definitely ROI is practically why I came to this conference. But big question, productivity and proficiency. So you mentioned those two things, and I was curious as to, now that you've done these two, efforts, and we forgot to measure, what have you done, I guess, or are you planning on doing, do you have like a rubric? Are you gonna this is what proficiency is, or how are you gonna measure that? Even though you did have two successful campaigns, how did you say, yes, this is why we're more productive or more proficient or whatnot, or you just kind of made that assumption? Or I was kind of curious as to how that worked out.
Yeah, really good question. So again, we didn't have the conversation, so we didn't get there yet. But because of the audience that we're looking at, right, these are salespeople. We want them to sell trucks, right? So ultimately, that's the goal. So we could look at things like, what are their sales efforts? Are they gaining new customers? Are they taking these new safety features and going out and prospecting to customers who are very safety conscious, who are environmentally conscious? When we talk about, some of the other features in the truck about fuel efficiency and things like that, are we going out there and talking to those people about our clean burning engines? Are they selling more trucks per month, per year than they did a year ago? And that can come down to individuals or teams within a dealership, or dealerships as a whole, dealer groups, so there's lots of ways that we can measure after the fact, right? But we didn't plan for any of it. So that's part of where, this conversation comes in. Had we sort of thought about what are we going to be looking at on the back end, we can also tailor what we offer in these experiences to really support prospecting new customers based on fuel efficiency and clean burning engines and, safety features and that kind of thing. Who are those customers? How to identify them? How to go after those new folks? How to sell these brand new trucks, right? We got to look at KPIs within the dealerships. How are they keeping track of trucks that are sold? Do we have the numbers to look at to do the comparisons? There's lots of things that we could have planned to do if we were a little bit better prepared, right? Okay, I think Alex says I'm done. So thank you guys. Have a great rest of your experience.